So yeah, Fallout 3 remake. So recently it's been reconfirmed by Nate the Hate that it's still in the works. I know I just kind of dropped it with that information. So we're going to start with we're going to start in the beginning. So when man created Earth, okay, not that far. But that's such a corny fucking joke. That was so bad. No, okay. But let's start with the beginning. So during the FTC and Microsoft trial, pretty much back when the trial was going on, the reason why the trial was going on was because the FTC was saying that the Activision Blizzard deal was very anti-competitive. Microsoft said it wasn't. I agree with the FTC. I thought it was a very anti-competitive move. And it was up until Microsoft decided that they just didn't want to worry with the legal problems and decided to go third party. You know what I mean? So now that they're third party, it's not as big of a deal. But I thought it was quite anti-competitive at the time. And I still think it is partially anti-competitive. But that's a whole different story for a different day. And during this trial, heaps of documents got leaked by the FTC by accident. One of those documents being a PlayStation document, because PlayStation was a part of the trial, which pretty much showed that PlayStation games cost, the higher end ones will cost around $400 to $200 million. That was one of the things that were leaked. And how those got leaked was they used a marker that was see-through. Yeah, I know. And one of the documents that ended up getting leaked was a ZeniMax roadmap. That roadmap being heaps of games that were meant to release in certain years. Roadmap is extremely inaccurate, and most of it is still happening or did happen, but a majority of it got pushed forward, or the dates aren't accurate. That's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, so going on to this roadmap, and obviously maybe you're watching this and you don't know, ZeniMax is the company that owns Bethesda. I don't know if you're watching this and you knew that or not. I just thought I'd mention it because quick little bit of information. So running through the actual roadmap. So the roadmap got a lot of things right and got a lot of things wrong. So skipping past financial year 2020 and 2021, pretty much it got all of the Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online expansions 100% correct. That was ended up all happening. Jeez, my nose. Indiana Jones game ended up happening. That was planned. That ended up happening. Then in FY 2022 or financial year 2022, they were meant to release the Oblivion remaster. I don't know if that's meant to be like when the game started full production or when the game because it says it was meant to release, or Indiana Jones was meant to release in financial year 2022. I don't know if that's meant to be the year it was meant to release, or if that was the year that they started full production on the title. I'm going to guess full production, but I could be wrong, probably wrong. It says Starfield and Redfall were meant to release in 2021. They didn't come until 2023. It said Doom Year Zero wasn't meant to come until 2023. That ends up coming in 2025. Doom Year Zero, which ended up being completely real and actually happening, ended up being Doom the Dark Ages. Clearly, they changed the name sometime down the line. But yeah, what I'm trying to make is this roadmap was very dodgy. A lot of the things never ended up actually coming true. But the main reason being things change. You know, projects get put into development, and then, you know, a week after they're put into development, then they go, hey, we can't do this, it's not going to happen. Then they cancel it, and they just silently cancel it. That's usually what happens. You know what I mean? Like another example of this is Ghostwire Tokyo sequel was planned for 2024. It never ended up happening because Tango Gameworks, well, they got shut down. But they ended up actually doing Hi-Fi Rush instead. You know, so maybe they were meant to work on Ghostwire Tokyo 2 sequel, but they went, hey, we want to work on Hi-Fi Rush. Microsoft went, no, whatever. Or sorry, more specifically ZeniMax, and then were shut down. You know, stuff like that happens all the time. So that's why people were looking at this list last year and they went, it's extremely inaccurate. A lot of things probably never ended up happening or never went into full production. And that's what a lot of people thought was going to happen with the Oblivion remake or remaster. That was not the case. And it turns out the remake, or I'm just going to call it a remake because it is a remaster, but it's so different from the original. It's a remake, you know, ended up happening and it ended up being true. And it ended up getting past that dodgy stage, you know, because it's very easy for these guys to make a roadmap of having a game in there. And it turned out a lot of the projects that they had in here either got pushed really far forward or ended up just getting cancelled. You know what I mean? Or most of these games were just in a pitch phase. They were just pitching them. You know what I mean? They weren't actually confirmed to be happening. They just put them in the roadmap to make it look a little bit more, it's like when a woman this might be a little sexist, I don't know. It's like when some women put like tissues in their bra to make their tits bigger. You know what I mean? That's pretty much what ZeniMax is doing right here. You know what I mean? They're like, look at what everything we've got releasing in all these years, and all the release dates ended up being wildly inaccurate. None of this ended up really coming out the year it was meant to come out. The only stuff that ended up coming out on the year that it was meant to was like the 2021. But the inaccurate thing is Doom the Dark Ages, or sorry, Doom Eternal ended up coming a year later. I don't know. Yapping too long about this. But yeah, people were suspecting the Oblivion remake or remaster was just going to go where a majority of the projects in this list went, which was in the trash. You know, studio probably pitched it. Maybe they were in really early production, but it just ended up getting cancelled, which was not the case because recently, just a month ago, it was leaked that the Oblivion remake was in the works. It was happening. It was shadow dropping in April, late April, and then radio silence. It was meant to drop in early April. People were like, oh, it was just a fake rumor. Bullshit. But then Jeff Grubb came out and went, hey, no, it's happening. It's real. It's releasing next week, on the 21st week. You know? And people went, oh, you should probably just, you know, clout and all that stuff. It's bullshit. And then the official studio that is developing the Oblivion remake accidentally posted screenshots on their website of the Oblivion remake and of promotional art showing it was coming to Game Pass, PlayStation, PC, Xbox, everything. And it was confirmed. It wasn't 100% confirmed. It's still not announced, but it was pretty much confirmed it is happening, meaning it never got cancelled and it did go forward and it happened, you know? And now looking back at it, people are going, well, that means the Fallout 3 remaster could be in the works, could still be in the works. And it sparked people's interest. They went, this list was right about the Oblivion remake. It ended up happening and it ended up getting over the line. So people were like, okay, we're interested in the Fallout 3 remake. And seeing as Nate the Hate was one of the big people who started I believe he was the big person who started the Oblivion remake rumor. Not the actual event releasing. Sorry about that noise. My nose is really blocked up for some reason. It just happens when I go to record sometimes. I don't know. Yeah. And seeing as I believe he was one of the people who pioneered the Oblivion remake coming out in April theory or rumor. People were asking me, they were like, hey, because again, he's a very reliable leaker, you know, is the Fallout 3 remake still in the works? You know what I mean? Because the Oblivion remake clearly stayed in the development, and he pretty much originally said, and I'm just going to run through this, and this part of the, this part of the, what I'm reading off is pretty much from Insider Gaming and Sam Semple. So the line I'm reading right now is from Insider Gaming's article. So I'll have them linked as a credit, even though I'm just taking a line. But yeah, so as spotted by the gamer, Nate the Hate 2 was asked recently on X, formerly Twitter, whether Fallout 3 Remastered was still in the works. Nate replied stating that it'll be a while before we see it. But yeah, it'll be a while before we see it, but didn't deny its existence. Another user asked whether it's still happening, which Nate replied, stating it is, planned but won't be out for a while. I know. So he's confirmed it's still happening. Now, you know, yeah, which is big because again, Nate the Hate is a really reliable leaker. People look at Nate the Hate and oh, Nate the Hate. Nate the Hate is a very reliable leaker. I think I'll even realize, like, he leaked the Switch 2 reveal like 4 days before it happened, and people calling him out is bullshit, and it ended up being true. And he's leaked far more bigger stuff in the past, but he's a very reliable leaker, meaning when he says something, it's usually actually happens, you know what I mean? And sometimes his sources can be wrong, sometimes his sources can fuck up, you know, and then he usually comes out and says, yeah, I was wrong on that one. You know what I mean? But this seems like saying, that's actually happening. You know what I mean? And seeing as the Oblivion remake is happening, it just adds more fuel to the fire, confirming more of that the Fallout 3 remake is happening and it's in development. Now, we're going to run through my theory, because that's... Hey, so I'm re-recording this how I feel part about the entire situation and what I think is going to be happening. I re-recorded it because I didn't really like how I did it originally. I just thought it was very scuffed and not very well put together. So we're going to redo it. So running through it, the studio that is developing the Oblivion remake is the same people who are developing the Metal Gear Solid 3 remake, or more specifically, they're co-developing it. I thought they were the full developer. They're actually not. They're only co-developing it next to Konami's full developer or main developer. And here's what I suspect's happening. In 2022, when they probably started full production of the Oblivion remake, and probably maybe the Fallout 3 remake, or not start full production. They were looking at their situation. They went, we can start full production on one right now. We can't do both of them. And I think they went to Bethesda and went, hey, we can't start production on both of these. We can't start full production on both of these. We have to pick one. Which one would you rather us pretty much start full production on now? And I believe Bethesda's went, start full production on the Oblivion remake, see how it does, and then start full production on the Fallout 3 remake. Now, I want to go into the reason why I think they did this. And I think the reason why they did this, again, that's just my theory, but I think if that turns out to be true, I think the reason why they did that is very simple. I think they plan on releasing the Elder Scrolls 6 in 2028, 2027. And I think if they'd started production, because I think they're going to start full production of the Fallout 3 remake, depending on if the Oblivion remake does well. I suspect they'll start full production of it probably by June, or maybe even late May, depending on when Bethesda gives them the green light to start full production. You know what I mean? And if they start full production of the Fallout 3 remake now, or in May to July, they're most likely not going to get it done until probably 2027, 2028. That's the release I'm looking at for the Fallout 3 remake. That's what I suspect. You know, and if they decide to release the Elder Scrolls 6 around that time, they don't want to, you know, yeah. If they decide to release the Elder Scrolls 6 around that time, then what they would have been doing is if they'd started full production on Fallout 3 back in 2022 and then decided to prioritize Oblivion's remake after that point, then what we would have had is you would have had two Elder Scrolls games releasing in the same period of time, or more specifically, two Elder Scrolls projects releasing at the same time, around the same time, so probably a couple months apart. You know what I mean? And I believe they wanted to space out the content. They wanted to be like, hey, I think we're going to get the news this year. The Elder Scrolls 6 is still happening. It's still in development. Obviously, it's still in development, but we're not going to get it until 2028, 2020, you know, probably 2028, 2027. But they're going to go, hey, but you do have the Oblivion remake, and I believe they're releasing the Oblivion remake now to tie us over until that point. And I believe that's the two reasons why they decided to start full production on the Oblivion remake over the Fallout 3 remake. You know, and the simple reason being, again, you know, it's a good tie-over game from now to the Elder Scrolls 6, and on top of that, then they don't have to release pretty much they don't have to release the Elder Scrolls Oblivion remake around the same time as the Elder Scrolls 6. You know what I mean? Because that'd be a bad idea. Because they could either do two things. They could drastically speed up production and release it way too early, you know, like in 2025. If they, let's say hypothetically, if they had started development on the Fallout 3 remake and that had come out in October of this, or sorry, August of this year, sorry, April of this year. I hope I wasn't saying August or October. I meant April. Yeah. And and then if they'd started production in May, or started full production in May to June for the Oblivion remake, they would have had to either do two things to make sure it doesn't release near the Elder Scrolls Online, the Elder Scrolls 6, and that would have been either drastically speed up production and get it out in early to mid 2026 before the Elder Scrolls 6, or do the other thing and drastically delay it a year or two or a year and a half after the Elder Scrolls 6. But I believe they thought that was both a bad idea, so they went, hey, you know, where we've got, I don't believe they told them this, but hey, we got the Elder Scrolls 6 releasing in 2028, 2027. You know, the Oblivion remake will be a good, you know, filler, or good. It'll be a good little time filler for people who are excited for the Elder Scrolls 6. It'll keep people there. You know, it's a little bit of filler content to keep people happy for a little while. That's my theory, and that's the reason. That's what I think. I believe that's my theory. You know, I mean, that's why they probably started full production on the Elder Scrolls Oblivion remake before they did the Fallout 3 remake. I didn't mention this before, but I am a firm believer, even though this isn't confirmed, that the Fallout 3 remake is most likely being done by the same studio. That's a good suspicion I have, 100%. But hey, whatever. And now talking about the Fallout 3 remake, I think another thing that was mentioned, or that I think, is I believe if they'd known the Fallout TV show would have been so big, I think they probably would have licensed the Fallout 3 remake to someone else, you know what I mean, to do it. Because I think if they knew the Fallout TV show was going to be as big as what it ended up being, I think they would have grabbed the Fallout 3 remake and given it to another studio that wasn't the studio that's developing the Oblivion remake, and went, hey, can you release this before the TV show? And they'd probably went, yeah, we could probably do that. But now it's pretty much out of the books, you know, and some people who suspect they may release the remake, or remaster remake, before season 2, that's unrealistic, because we're most likely going to be getting season 2 of the Fallout TV show in probably suspicious, not suspicious, probably what I suspect is maybe October to November of next year. And I don't believe they're going to be able to release a complete overhaul of Fallout 3 in a year and a half. I think we more accurately see an early to mid 2026 release date for the Elder Scrolls Online. Fallout 3, and I believe we see a late to mid 2027 release date for the Fallout 3 remaster. That's what I suspect, but I believe they're going to try to space it out so it doesn't release it around the exact same time as the Elder Scrolls, the Elder Scrolls 6, because they know even though Fallout and the Elder Scrolls 6 are two different franchises, and they kind of cater to kind of different audiences. The same people, technically. It doesn't matter. They still don't want to release one major remake right next to a major release of theirs. So I suspect that they'll release it 6 to 1 year before the Elder Scrolls 6, you know what I mean? But they can release Fallout 3 closer to the Elder Scrolls 6 without hurting it as much, because again, Fallout's a different franchise to Elder Scrolls 6 or to the Elder Scrolls, but Oblivion's the same franchise, and I think releasing the same franchise type game, or releasing a project in the same franchise or the same the same franchise, the same series around the same time as you're releasing, a really critically a sequel to like the most critically acclaimed games of all time. And then like 6 months later or 6 months earlier, you just had the Oblivion remake. I just think that's too much content, and they didn't want people to get too much too fast. And yeah, that's my reasoning, and that's why I think the the Fallout 3 remake is releasing around that time or in that space. Yeah. I kind of butchered it, and I went a little longer than what I should have and what I could have, but hey, this is a learning journey. I'm gonna quit yapping. I want to know how y'all feel about a Fallout 3 remake. Would you pick one up? Will you not? And on a side note, will you be picking up the Oblivion remake? I definitely will be. I'm really excited to play it. I hope it gets a physical launch, but who really knows? It's most likely gonna be digital only. If it's digital only, it'll be a Steam pickup. If it's physical, it'll be a PS5 pickup. But I'm gonna quit yapping. Want to know, how do y'all feel about a Fallout 3 remake? And y'all good. Bye.